Just one office alone has received more than 10,000 emails and 1,000 voicemails to re-examine the death of Elijah Mclean. That list is growing, and the governor is asking questions too. Dismantling racism is complicated, but it can start by asking a simple question and a willingness to learn. There's a debate over how the homeless community is treated.
Some of these encampments have, quite frankly, have spiraled into acute public health threats.
Protesters had something to say about it too, arriving at the doorsteps of the mayor's press conference. A fight to keep the music playing in Colorado. Venues are allowed to open, but the restrictions have them feeling uneasy about their future. That's next.
There is another voice that is being added to a list of growing people calling for new action after the death of Elijah Mclean. The governor is now asking questions. Now, he didn't explicitly call for a new investigation. He did, however, tweet saying he asked legal counsel to look into what the state can do. Elijah Mclean died last August after a struggle with Aurora police officers. Officers used a now banned chokehold. Paramedics gave him a dose of ketamine, and Mclean later died at the hospital. He was 23 years old. Now, earlier this month, 3 Aurora City Council members asked the city manager for an independent investigation. That ended up being scrapped because it turned out the lawyer that was picked was a former law enforcement and had defended several officers and departments. Those same 3 council members now have a new request today, and that is coming with a deadline. A list of independent investigators to look into Elijah Mclean's death on their desks by July 16th. The council members on Aurora's Public Safety Committee said that this must be done quickly, saying, quote, delaying action will only cause further strain in our community. As Denver mayors talked about the city's response to COVID-19 today, in between the questions and answers, you could hear protesters at the doorsteps. It turned today's press conference into one about the pandemic and the city's homeless. The shouts followed the mayor out of that press conference today, and protesters had gathered outside the doors calling for a change in how Denver is treating its homeless community. They want more resources like water, bathrooms, and trash, and an end to what a lot of people are calling sweeps of homeless camps. The city is calling those cleanups and say that they need to happen. Now, the mayor says that the city has a duty to clean up camps that have become a danger to public health. This was also a point that was brought up today. The CDC has guidelines that recommend against moving camps, but the director of Denver's Department of Health said that they've talked to the CDC about this situation themselves.
I understand what it says on their website, but I will share with you that we've also had conversations with members at the CDC, and their response and their guidance has been that we need to balance the public health threats that we see within our community, those that we see in encampments and what we see with COVID-19. And so I'm very confident that the CDC would not encourage us to allow the conditions that I've seen in some encampments. There are a number of encampments that we don't act upon because they don't present the same public health threat that we see in others.
The mayor met with a small group of protesters after the press conference, and reporters weren't allowed in, but protesters inside ended up live streaming it, and they talked for about an hour. We are in the middle of a movement that has changed laws, policies, names of neighborhoods, and could now be changing the way that Civic Center Park looks. Protesters want a statue that is dedicated to Christopher Columbus taken down. Our Steve Steger is taking a look at the history and the compromise the city is hoping to make.
Had you passed this statue in Civic Center Park with just a brief glance, you may not have known. A Black Lives Matter mural currently covers the plaque, a plaque that reads, "This statue was dedicated to Christopher Columbus."
It was dedicated to the city on June 24th, 1970, which makes today the 50th anniversary of that.
Michael Chavez is the Public Arts Program Director for Denver Arts and Venues. His current task, going through the 400 pieces of public art throughout the city with an equity lens to see if any could be perceived as symbols that make people uncomfortable.
It was donated by a man named Alfred Adamo, who was an Italian immigrant, came to the United States in 1905 and made his way to Denver.
Adamo also donated the lions that lead you into the Greek amphitheater, but he wanted more.
He decided he wanted to donate a sculpture to the city of Denver that was representative of his Italian heritage.
Chavez says a local artist named William Joseph sculpted it. He passed away, but Chavez spoke to the artist's son.
His father was never crazy about attributing it to Christopher Columbus because he wanted the sculpture to be about humankind connecting from the four corners of the earth.
Adamo didn't go for that and gave it the plaque.
The artwork itself is the copyright. The signage that's on the pedestal is not the artwork.
As protesters call for that statue to be removed, Chavez says the place to start is the plaque.
I think the plaque does have to come off of it. The next step is to figure out, can we bring in the artist's original intent and add a new story to it.
Now, Denver eliminated Columbus Day decades ago, but the state legislature just eliminated it earlier this year. They chose instead of Columbus Day to replace it with St. Francis Cabrini Day. St. Francis Cabrini, for those of you who do not know, the patron saint of immigrants with some ties to Colorado.
So, Steve, as a whole, how is the city handling this? What is their protocol for investigating it?
Yeah, you think about this, you think about Stapleton, there are a lot of things right now that are seeing that kind of change. The mayor actually commissioned a panel to look at different place names, look at different artwork throughout the city, to try to look at it through that equity lens and see if it might make people uncomfortable. That group is going to start meeting. I believe Friday is their first meeting to start to talk about some of these things. I asked Michael Chavez if he's seen any pieces of artwork that might be concerning. He says he is still going through all of it right now.
All right. Thanks for that. Appreciate it, Steve. Well, there were so many people who were trying to address racism. They crashed a nonprofit's website twice in the last couple of weeks. This is a nonprofit that is dedicated to a word that is coming up a lot in conversation these days. Steve just said it, equity. Some of those questions are pretty simple, like what is equity? And that's okay because this is an issue that's really complicated. Here's part of our conversation with Dr. Nita Mosby-Tyler.
Equity is something that we've not really tackled, and it's different than the other things that we've done in the past.
What about equality versus equity? Those aren't necessarily the same things.
You think about the major movements in our country, the women's movement, the gay rights movement, the civil rights movement, all of those were equality movements. They were really about level setting, bringing one group up to the same standard as another group. So it was the great equalizer, and most often those were legislated kinds of things. That's the equality work that we've been at for a long time. Equity work is different in that it isn't about giving everybody the same thing. It's about giving people what they need. And that means to some degree, we have to customize what different populations or communities actually receive.
Can you give a couple of examples of equity that needs to be addressed right now?
I know today we're talking a lot about policing and the justice system, but there are some things around our systems of education that I think we could do really quickly. What job have we done around the issue of diversity? Do we have Black teachers, teachers of color in place to support the nuanced needs of children of color?
It's the kind of change some schools have been working on, and law enforcement, library systems, even scientists are reaching out for help to improve.
This isn't really all about bad people, negative hearts and minds. Equity actually allows you to deconstruct all of the moving pieces that created racism in the first place.
So what is something that you and I can do? So a lot of this is about asking questions within your own company or what you're seeing day to day. It could be as simple as looking at the holiday schedule and what's offered, to even analyzing interview questions when you're looking to hire someone. And honestly, it's okay to ask questions and just acknowledge that there is something that can be changed and improved. With a word of thanks. This is a newish segment, and you guys have really shown up in a huge way, and we cannot thank you enough for that. And as usual, like we've seen in the last couple of times, there's one specific word that's coming to mind.
Someone told me recently that word of thanks has become their favorite part of Next, and I think it's mine too. In 3 weeks, you have generously contributed $180,000 to clean up Civic Center Park, to mentor young black men in our community, and to provide a welcoming space for LGBTQ seniors at the Center on Colfax. All right, what are we going to do together this week? The word that comes to mind when I think about PCs for People is connection. They refurbish used laptops and other devices and then offer low-cost internet so that low-income students can connect to the internet at home, connect to their work and to their peers. They've closed the digital divide with 115,000 computers over the years. They will launch a new initiative tonight with our help. Here's the deal. There are seniors in our community who are isolating at home right now to protect against COVID-19. I think a lot of us take for granted having the technology on both ends to connect with our older relatives. Imagine somebody who has been relatively alone for months, and the only thing keeping them and their family from connecting is the cost of a device and the internet service. PCs for People will launch a program to get those devices to low-income seniors with our support here tonight. I will never ask just you to give, so if you're in for $5, you're in for $5, and $5, I will match the first 50 next viewer's contributions. Text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491 to get a link to donate, or you can find it on Next social media pages or in the next section of 9news.com. We can offer connection to low-income seniors who have spent months cut off from the world and are preparing for months more at home.
All right, everyone, deep breaths. Just 5 days until Kyle is back from furlough. A very friendly reminder, it was never permanent. And any show, you guys, has a great team behind them. It's some people you see, some people you don't, but everyone is working really hard to bring you the best show possible, so you are in good hands.
The Convention Center Field Hospital has a pretty big budget. It does not have a big list of patients, though. Live music is making a comeback, but they aren't sure how long they can keep the show going.
It hasn't seen one patient, but Colorado's temporary field hospital at the Convention Center needs more money. A test run a couple of weeks ago revealed what's lacking if the Convention Center actually saw patients. Our Marshall Zellinger is breaking down what the hospital needs and when the temporary hospital might actually be used.
Leasing out the Colorado Convention Center to turn it into a temporary hospital has cost the state a mile high, $5,280,000 from April to June. $60,000 a day to keep it ready if a COVID-19 surge overwhelms local hospitals. The state has the convention center reserved through the end of the year. From June 1st to June 4th, the state held a dry run with about 200 patients and learned it didn't plan for enough laundry and food. So today, the state asked the city of Denver to set aside more money to get enough laundry, cleaning, food, and some IT services. So far, Denver has approved almost $1.5 million through September. The state will pay Denver all that money back. The state itself will also get paid back, mostly. FEMA will reimburse 75% for all of Colorado's alternative care sites, like the Convention Center and the Ranch in Loveland. 75% of the cost of all the wheelchairs that are ready and waiting. 75% of the medical equipment. 75% of whatever it may cost if this place actually sees a patient. Everything the city of Denver has set aside helps prepare that field hospital for patients at least through September 30th. Today, council members were told that public health modeling shows that a potential surge could hit September 23rd. So if patients are actually needed, the city of Denver would be asked for more money to be set aside to operate the hospital. Again, it will be paid back in the end. Anusha.
All right, very interesting. And as always, appreciate all the info, Marshall. We'll be right back. Live music is making a comeback here in Denver, but venues aren't really sure how much longer they can keep the show going. So some music lovers are helping out in the most appropriate way, a benefit concert.
Independent venues and live music are struggling right now, and the future is super uncertain.
Hi everybody, it's Rob Rushing with Punk Rock Saves Lives. One of the biggest things in our world is music, and through the whole COVID situation, there hasn't been live music, obviously. They're starting to let venues open back up right now, but at a very, very small capacity.
Right now, we're just day by day. I'm Andy Burka. I am one of the owners of the Oriental Theater. I think independent venues are everything to the local community. Without these local venues, I think there would be a big void in arts and culture here in Denver.
We're hearing of amazing venues every day calling it quits already through this pandemic. Even as everybody's cheering that we're getting to have live music again, it's going to be on such a small scale. We've got to do something to support our local venues, our independent venues.
So here we go this Saturday night. Punk rock saves lives and ska brewing benefit for Colorado music venues.
Any of the money donated during that time will go to those 4 venues to help support and keep them alive.
You know, it's not just important that the Oriental Theater makes it, but it's important that Mutiny succeeds and Seventh Circle and Streets of London and all the other local independent venues. You know, we're all in this battle together.
We love our hometown, we love our local venues, and we want to do something to help them survive this whole situation.
Hey, I'm back with a quick reminder of what we're doing with our Word of Thanks micro-giving campaign this week. PCs for People, the nonprofit, is going to start a brand new program with our help tonight to get refurbished laptops and other devices to low-income seniors who are isolated at home right now due to the pandemic. It'll provide them connection so that they can stay in touch with family and friends. Text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491 to get a link to donate, or you can find it on Next social media pages or on the Next section of 9news.com. What do you say? Are you in for $5? As always, I will match the first 50 Next viewers' contributions. I really wish I could be there with you today, but I'm watching from home and cannot wait to see how we help seniors in need connect with the outside world. Thank you.
Well, Brian wrote in that the last 2 charitable causes hit close to his heart, so this week, like last week, he's going to be giving $10. That generosity is incredible. Thank you so much, Brian. We'll see you next time.